Welcome, everybody, to today's Lunch and Learn. I'll be your host, Jared. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat, or if it's a more complicated issue, I can set you guys off of mute and you can ask your questions, and I'll do my best to answer it verbally and also demonstrate it. All right, Helmut, I'm going to allow you to talk. Go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, I have an application that I'm developing right now, and its main purpose is to allow our business users to store documents and information that's related to them within the forms that they're filling out. My attempt is one where I'm using a data repeater to take in lines of data. So the data repeater has a singular attachment and then a couple other fields where they put in information about that attachment. I'm having trouble finding the right form control to give me the ability that I want, and that's to attach that attachment to the data repeater field. And then, for example, if they want to edit that form a second time, I want them to be able to see the name of that attachment that they've attached to that line of the data repeater, and then also possibly re-download it again from that line of the data repeater. I've had mixed success doing all those things with the different upload and download form controls that are available. I just wanted to see what your expert advice would be in doing that.
Gotcha. So yeah, let me see if I can pop in. So basically, the problem is you want to be able to, in a data repeater row, have an edit function for them so that they can upload, download, or like view
Yeah,
what.
more or less. The form itself has a data repeater in it, and then I'd like them to be able to attach, 5 or 6 or a dynamic number of, or one attachment to a dynamic number of repeater rows.
Oh, I see. So you want to
Yeah.
basically say, oh, like, so if I have 5 records of like Jared, Sabrina, Jada, you want to be able to say this one document is for these 3 individuals, theoretically.
Not quite. Maybe I misexplained it. So in this particular instance, we're talking about trailers, like that haul liquids and stuff. And for each trailer, there are certificates of insurance. And in 2023, they'll have a certificate of insurance that we'd like to associate with that trailer. And then 2024 comes around and they have a new certificate of insurance that we'd like to just make another line in that data repeater on that form and add that new that attachment, that new certificate of insurance, while still maintaining the previous attachments that we've added in the past.
Okay.
And I'm just curious if there's a limitation with the data repeaters as far as attachments are concerned. Being able to attach them, save them where they should be, and then download them at a later date.
Yeah, so that there's no, so 2 things. There's no really limit to the data repeaters. Like, you can do some pretty dynamic things with them. So like, for example, I have this data repeater. I can easily add a row to say upload document for this person, or let's say they're, trailers.
Okay.
For this trailer, I have this document, and then I can have an action that like displays further information of that specific trailer, and then I can actually add more documents to of this. The only thing that you would have to be aware of is you would have to determine where you want to store that data. In decisions, you can store them as documents or file references, and
Right.
they'll live in, decisions. Or let's say you have some external Azure service where you store documents, you can also just put those documents there as well and just merely store the ID associated with that record for it. So a generic recommendation would be, let me go to my repeater. I think it's this one. Nope, that's not the one I want to go to. Right here is you can create. I would probably use a subdialog image or subdialog button if you want to have extend the form experience to upload as many files as are needed for that specific trailer record. And if you need to have only a one-to-one, you can even do that as well. So that would be the feature that I would go with. Go ahead.
And how would that affect the underlying data structure that is set to receive those attachments? Because currently I have one data structure that the entire repeater fills. And I guess I'm just having trouble because I'd like them to be able to attach it. Oh, but you're saying have a sub dialog flow where then you can display like the name of the file and such, and have a download
Mhm.
button there as well.
Exactly. Yeah, and you could extend the form experience that way. That's a design, an architect, you know,
Yeah. Okay.
decision. That's an idea.
Okay. Um,
Um, to go to your question about how does it affect the data structure. So you just have to make sure that in this data repeater, like in whatever data structure you're using for the data repeater, that you have some type of section to store those files temporarily, right?
yeah.
Because all this stuff in the input data here, all the controls just point to whatever the form data it's associated with.
Right.
So you have to, there would be a minor change to this, to this data structure here.
And the way that it's currently built is there's a sub data structure within my flow extension data structure that is meant to house these, right? Because you have a
Hmm.
repeater, and so it's a list of lists.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think that's adequate enough to receive the files that I'm trying to associate with the repeater lines.
Hmm.
Um, but
Okay.
I guess I'm just having a little bit of trouble with it.
Gotcha. Oh, what's the question you have that I can further clarify?
Um, I'm not sure because I can get it to save into the data repeater data structure, and then at a later
Hmm.
date when people go in and they edit, I use an advanced data grid to allow them to choose which line of the data repeater they want to make edits to. And then for whatever reason, when you know it, the repeater information, the list goes into the advanced data grid, and then it gives an output right, whichever the user selects on.
Hmm.
And from there, the attachment is comes out nulled. I haven't been able to figure it out. I'm wondering if I'm doing something wrong.
Gotcha. Let me see if I can just create a really quick, brief example of this
It is kind of
file.
complicated because it's like repeater to advanced data grid, and then I'm trying to, yeah.
Yeah, let's see if I create something real quick. I'll just do a flow structure. We won't save anything. So test file fs. So we got, let's say trailer name, and then I'll say we got just trailer description, and then we'll say this is just file, and we'll just make it just file data. We'll just do one for right now. All right, so that's going to compile. So my suggestion would really be, let's just create this form or data repeater. And we'll create this as the trailer repeater control. Put this in here. Now what you can do is you could, so what I was suggesting is, so right, we have, this is going to be what, trailer name, I think is what I said, trailer name. Let me pick the input type to be test file repeater fs. We're gonna set this to name. Sure, set this to, oops, description. And then, let's see, sub dialog button. We can call this upload files or upload file.
Yeah, it's a singular file if that makes it easier for you.
Sure, yeah. Upload file, so perfect. So now what I can do with this is I could upload that file. So let me just create a really
Yeah, take your time.
upload form. We'll see how fast I can do this. That's always been the fun things in
Much
decisions.
faster
We're
than
like, how
I.
fast?
Much faster than me.
Well, I mean, I've probably been doing it a little bit longer, so it all comes
Yeah,
with
a
time.
little bit, yeah.
All right, this is gonna be pretty ugly, so we're gonna say this is just a file. All right, and we will. I want the area, no, because the area is just easier, less clicks. Let's say this is a file. Sure, we'll leave the file data max right there. We'll say
And
done.
quickly before you come out of this screen, I have a question
Mhm.
about the file upload controls, which sometimes I'll upload a file and it'll show me the name of the file that I just uploaded and then a little X and a little download button
Mhm.
there. Some of them do not. I'm wondering if they allow really for the upload and download, or if you need the upload and a separate download control and map them to the same like data name or same field in the data structure.
You may. I'm not sure off the top of my head. We'd have to just test that out.
Okay.
I think you could just collect. I think this upload area control will allow you to click on it, and I think it might download it for you, but I could be wrong on that one. It's been a while
Yeah.
since I used those controls. We have to just use a
Problem.
separate one. And then we do the form. All right, so we have the main form. And this one's going to have the data repeater. Data repeater. We're just going to put this one in here. Pick create test repeater control. Perfect. We'll make this a little smaller. Right. And we'll say this is trailer datas. And I forgot a button. So put a button here. And then what we'll do is, that's right. So this data will be generated. So let's say, let me add a row. Add the add and remove buttons. Add data repeater, add. And then data repeater, remove. And then remove. Perfect. Let me connect those up here. All right, so that's connected up. So now when I run this, run flow, show form. Oh, and I don't think I've configured that subdialog form. Gotta do that real quick. Main form, so then we'll just edit this. We'll go inside here, upload, edit this, and then I'll do show upload. I was like, what did I say? Upload? I think that's what I called it. Nope, that's step upload form. Haha, there we go. I think this is the one I made. Yep, it is the one I made. All right, and then what I'll do, set the output data, form data, and then I have the current item, and I can say that I can map it into the file here. And so
Okay.
that will store it. If I go to current item, let's see. Okay, then I think that's what I want. I don't want anything here. Sub dialog button, that's just the button. All right, click OK. All right, so that should configure and that should work. Okay. And so, and then what we want to make sure we do is that we also want to make sure that on the inputs, looks like it doesn't take an input. I thought it did take an input. File, specify, oh, here it goes. I can specify inputs. So now I think I can take in an input and an output.
Specify the input.
Yeah, the reason why is because, right, you have to think of the context of if you click on this again, you want it to pull from the
What
current
it was
item
saved previously.
file. Exactly. So if there is an item, it will pull it. If there isn't, it'll just display nothing. That's the theory.
Eureka.
Yeah. So close and save this. Save. I think this should work. Could be wrong. Debug. All right. Add some data. We'll say this is, I don't know, Miami. And this is going to FL. Upload file. Let me see if I got some random stuff. There you go. Some random database query that I misspelled. All right. So I got it there. So there you go. You can click on this text and this will download it if you want to. That's what I thought. So if I upload this and then I click upload again, boom, it's still there.
And
so
so
I can
if you
look at
were
it.
and so if you were to save this to like a data structure and then create another flow that would allow you to like feed this back into a form and then allow editing, theoretically you'd still be able to see this this upload screen and be able to download it the same way.
Yeah, basically, so anything with the form stuff, this is all temporary, like runtime right now. You can
Right.
still display the form. You just have to make sure that after this runs, whatever process you have after this stores that file and this information in some permanent location. So your data
Right.
structure that you configured, folders and decisions, external integrations. And then all you have to do is if ever you want to display that data in this format again, you just merely pull that data and then with inputs display that to the form. And then it will, pop, it will look like this.
Yeah. So I guess currently I'm trying to store it in a sub data structure inside of a flow extension data structure. Does that sound, prohibitive right off the bat? I'm still pretty new to the whole data structure stuff.
Sure. Great question. I actually would, if you can, I would switch your design paradigm. So the cool thing about process folder, I think I have a couple in my example here, is right here. Oh, cool. These are actually folders and decisions. So why is that relevant? The reason why that's relevant is I can actually store documents or file references in this folder. This way, whenever you fetch this trailer record, you can just look inside the folder and say, pull the documents out inside the folder, and then boom, it's there. So you won't need to do a list of documents inside of a flow execution extension. You can merely utilize the folder. So like, for example, let's say I can change this really quick. So let's say I'm going to edit my form and add some file upload thing, right? So we're going to add a file upload, upload area, boom. We'll say this is file, all that stuff. Right. Yeah, I know. So now what I can do is notice that with this, let me move a lot of this stuff out of the way. And let me control this, move this here. You'll notice that I'm using a case entity here, but it's the same concept with a flow execution extension. You're just going to use the setup process folder step.
Right.
What both the setup process folder step and the case entity have is they both output an ID of some sorts right here.
Right.
Basically, what this means is that's the ID of the folder just created.
And
So
this is
what
how
I
I have
can
it
do,
set up. Yeah.
perfect. Okay, cool. So then I'm going to be using this step to illustrate this, but it's the exact same procedure. So what would happen is, let's say I create this record. Instead of storing the file in my data structure, notice I have a folder ID. So all I'm going to do is I can say, hey, you need to do two things when you're dealing with file data. If you're, we recommend you use file reference entities. Reason why is because they utilize the servo file structure to store files, which is what it's made for. You can use the document data structure decisions. It's just a little heavier and it's stored in a database table. So it's like a cell, a serialized cell in a
Yeah.
database table. So the problem with that is if you have really large files, you may have some performance concerns at that point. That's why
Right.
we reference just using a file reference. So how we do that is you just load from file data is the step you would use, which all of this does, right? You may be asking, why do you got to do this? All this does is notice it transforms the file data, which is a file data source used in memory, and transforms it into the file reference data type, which is the more permanent storage one. So that's why we use this step, because it converts file data to file reference. Okay, so we got that part. So I'm going to select from flow. Oops, if I can go to my inputs. If I select from flow and I grab file, now what I would have to do is I need to tell decisions, okay, we have the permanent data type to store. Where do we want to store it? And that's where we use this step. You can't search for it. The directions to it, and I can also type it in the chat, is it's in integration, internal services, and you're going to go down to the file reference service. File, where is it? File reference service. And then you're going to use this step, create entity from file reference. So let me just type that in the chat real quick, because I know it's a little bit. Integration, internal services. I think it was a file reference service, and then create entity, entity from file reference. And I'll put in parentheses that this is the actual step right there. So now what this allows us to do is we can say, hey, I'm going to attach this here. Notice it asks for two inputs. What's the file? And then where you want to store it. Now, because the setup process folder outputs a process folder, a folder ID. Also, the case entity step outputs a folder ID. So all I have to do is select from flow, grab that output of the folder ID, or in your case, it's going to say process folder ID. Same thing, it's just a different name for the same road. Select this. Now it's going to store there, and then I just need to select and store my file. And so now when I debug this, I'm going to run it real quick, and I'll just put some test data, choose my file. Where is, oh yeah, I'll use that same file when I send the button through, and you'll see now it went through, and now it's stored that file in this folder ID. So it successfully is there. I can confirm that by going to the place where I store the data, purchase requests, And which one did I just create? What's the date? 30th. It's this one. And so now if I actually go to the folder view, you'll see I have this file stored right there. Now I'm going to extend your question because this is good. You're going to get to the process. How do I fetch it? Right? How do I get this thing back? Right? Because you want to display it.
For example,
Yeah,
when I'm trying to see the information in those data repeater rows again at a later date. Is that kind of where we're going?
Exactly, 100%. So yeah, how do we display that information? So now what you need to do, I'm going to do it in a static context, but you can definitely do this dynamically. What you're going to do is I'm actually going to move this one off my screen just so I can reference it as I develop. So I'm going to close and save this. So I stored some data. Now I want to fetch it. So I'm going to go to the dynamic data repeater. I'm going to go to my test flow. I think is that the right place? Wait, save. Nope. I want to go to file. There we go. That's what I want. Run flow. Right. And so then all I'd have to do is I would just say, hey, let me go ahead and pass in this data here. So what I would use, if you want to query or get some data from your folders, there's two ways you can do it. You can use the fetch entity step, and I'll show you both ways. You can use the fetch entity step. You can also use another step called get a file reference. Get file, what is it? I think it's called get file references a folder. Pretty sure that's what it's called. Is it get references, get file. Here we go. Get file references in folder. Basically, you just attach a folder ID and then it will display it. So in this case, you can get this dynamically. I'm just going to statically paste in that ID. I'm going to do this off screen. I'm basically just going to my record, getting that ID, and I'm going to paste this as a constant. Like I said, when you build your application, this is the thing I would actually store in your like data structure. Like, and I would just call this like file, like or actually you don't really need to. You can just say, hey, I want to fetch. You actually want to need to store. You can just say, hey, the folder, the ID of your folder, you want to just check and pull that dynamically and get any full files inside of it. I'm just doing it statically just to illustrate. Go ahead.
Can I ask? So just to clarify, you're saying in the lines of the data repeater and the underlying data structure, don't physically save the file into that data structure, but rather this ID of the location of the files, so that next time when you're trying to populate those files back into the data repeater to possibly edit them, it's more you're using references rather than the file itself.
Kind of. The reason why I'm saying so it's almost there. The reason why I'm saying utilize storing the files in the folders because it lets you fetch them easier and you have a lighter weight data structure. So it's better. It's more performant essentially.
Yeah.
Because you're utilizing putting files in folders, and then whenever you want the file associated with the folder record, you just merely utilize this get file references step, query all your records and say, hey, I want to see, the trailer for going to Miami. What is its credentials? Oh, boom. Okay, I know it's got the 2023 certificate, 2022 certificate. Okay, we got a renewal because it's coming to 2024, right? So it's for that type of capability.
Okay, I think I understand a little bit more.
Gotcha. Okay, good. So this one, just to show you the functionality, I'm going to build data on this because I have to just because of how I built it. But this one would be dynamic. So I can just fetch my file reference and I can do first, and then notice I have a file data variable that I can pass through. And so once I pass that file data through, and I'm just going to set this as a constant, like it says test. And then when I debug this, I should have one record that has a file, boom, right there. So basically what that did, let me minimize this, is it said, okay, hey, I found the document inside that folder by the ID. Here's one. And then I'll place it inside inside this data repeater.
Okay. So I kind of get it. I think there's a little bit more complexity with my exact context that I'm trying to do it in, but it's been helpful a little bit.
Okay, cool. All right. I'll move on to Daryl. All right, Daryl says, hello, I have an API call from Decisions that is giving me an authentication error, 422. I use the same key and URL in Postman with the out JSON from debug and it works. Any thoughts as to why my flow won't authenticate with my API call? Let me give you permissions to talk. My gut reaction, where's my chat? Come on, Zoom, work with me. I want to go, that's the webinar chat, Q&A. Is that the webinar chat? Oh, I need participants. Man, I'm like still struggling how to use this. Alrighty, I'll allow you to talk, Daryl. So essentially, Daryl, what if you want to give context on about this, please do. But essentially, what I think is what I would check. Here's my initial thing: is let's just check permissions that whatever user or name session is accessing that flow, that has decisions permissions to access that thing. I don't know. Have you checked that route?
Well, I appreciate your help. So we actually we built a couple application decision. We're using the same key in AR because A or URL because we're passing it to the same third party system.
Mm-hmm.
And it works in our other application. It works
Mm-hmm.
in Postman, but when I'm utilizing it now, same key, same URL, I'm getting that error saying that it's a remote server returned an error, unprocessable entity. And so it's like, and it says in the quotation, the API key is provided. It's not authorized to utilize it, but it clearly should be because in Postman it's doing it, and in our other application that's in production, it's working with the exact same key. So this is my context of it. It's an application you fill out. We fill out all the information application, and then what we want to do is pass it into another system using
Yeah.
this URL and API key.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not working. It's giving me that error.
Now, like, are you? So, is this an integration to into a decision system or an integration into some external system?
External system.
External. So you call that external system whatever external system Y, for example, and that works in Postman and it works in the
Another
production
application.
server
Yes.
of decisions that calls it, right?
Yes.
So is there any way, can we confirm that so you said it's the exact same key. Is there any like extra spaces or characters that are getting added in the dev environment?
Yeah, no, because I checked that. I
Mm,
went and copied it from the dev environment, dropped it in the Postman, exactly same, and it works. Copied it back
mm,
to the dev environment, tried to debug and run it, and I still get the same error.
mm.
Saying that the key provided is not authorized. And as I said too, it's also that same key that we're using in an application that's working in dev and production right now, that we did a couple months ago.
Yeah, and it used to work before, right? The dev one, because I think that's
Yeah.
the issue, right?
Yes, it used to work, and in my
Mm,
old in the other application, it's we still have a dev version of that one. That same key is still working in the dev environment there also.
mm. So okay, so it used to work. Do we know like what changed afterwards? Yeah, I was going actually where Vital was going. Do we know if like the other app is whitelisted in the external system you're integrating with? Because this doesn't sound like an auth like this. It is an auth issue, but it sounds more like a network auth issue, not necessarily an API
Yeah,
configuration name system issue.
no, it shouldn't. The app that we're going to, the third party app that we're going to, we use the same system. That third party system is the same for both. So it's working with my previous application that we built.
Mm-hmm.
But when I try to call it in the new application we just built, the same third party systems, it's getting the error there.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
the
and we've
system is the same.
confirmed that the new app has access to that system.
It's yes, it should. It should. I guess where would I would check that if I had maybe I should know that.
That I'm assuming you have to reference the third party service on like what you'd have to authenticate for that. Like that'd be something you would have to sync with your ops team to find out.
Yeah,
Because
and because we
that's
have
dealing with the yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, because what we have is, we built a structure, JSON structure,
Yeah.
that passes that information through. Um, and so what I assumed it would be, it worked in Postman. I was thinking it should work in decisions because I just copied and pasted that same JSON structure in there, and it was able to pass it all through successfully. But I can check with our vendor on that system to see if there's anything that could be blocking it. Because I can't think of anything on the decision side myself.
Yeah, same. Because like from what you described to me, if it works in prod and it's only this new application, that usually means that something is different in the new application, and maybe that needs to be authorized in somehow and from a network capacity.
Okay.
If permitting the keys is the same, permitting everything works in different systems, then something localized to just the conversation between that new app and that external system.
Okay. All right. All right. Yeah, I can take that away. Yeah, that's what I need. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Gotcha. My pleasure.
Mhm.
All right, since there are no more questions, I'm going to go ahead and stop the Lunch and Learn. Today marks the end of Lunch and Learn for this week. We'll start back next week on Monday for Lunch and Learns. If you need assistance during that time, feel free to reach out to the support team to submit any technical inquiries that you may have. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week.